All right, welcome everybody. My name is Austin Minter on behalf of the Army Cyber Institute and the Jack Voltaic team. Welcome. Thanks for taking the time to dial in. So you've made room in your schedule for this. So we'd ask that you give yourself permission to stay engaged by kind of minimizing a lot of the distraction that usually accompany webinars and kind of online conferencing meetings, right? If you can, take a minute, close the office door, minimize your cell phone and other work, and just expectation management. We don't anticipate the meeting going any longer than an hour, right? So 4 points of admin I'd like to cover up front. Number one, I should have everybody just muted. You can unmute yourself on the computer, or if you're dialed in by phone, you can press *6. Again, that's *6 if you're just dialing in by phone. But please try and make sure you remember to mute yourself after any comments or questions. Also, the second thing, please rename yourself in the participants menu option and just put your name and organization. And the way that works, you just kind of shake your mouse around and move it down to where the Zoom controls are. There should be a participants button or icon. You can find your name in that list. You can click rename, and then please just add your organization where your name is there as well. Third thing, if you want to go ahead and open the chat, we're going to try to push all questions to the chat function. And so again, you shake your mouse, you'll see the little Zoom icons. You should see the chat bubble. Click on that, and feel free, as soon as we're getting going here, even right now, we've got the chat open, and so we can kind of monitor, so we can either respond back, or if it's any questions you have, put them in the chat and we'll answer them at the end. And if we don't answer exactly what you're looking for, again, you can always email us, aci.jackvoltaic@westpoint.edu. Lastly, I'll push the slides in the chat here in a minute as soon as I turn it over to Colonel Fletcher, so you guys can actually pull the slides straight out of the chat. And if you didn't get that last email from Eventbrite, or if something didn't work on the share function, and then I can also email them out later if you don't get them. So that wraps up our admin items. I'll now turn it over to Colonel Doug Fletcher, our Jack Voltaic team lead. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Austin. And just like to reiterate what Austin said. We really appreciate you taking the time to join us today on our Jack Voltaic 3.0 kickoff webinar. Jack Voltaic 3.0 is put together by the Army Cyber Institute and our industry partner, FTI Consulting. And really what we want to get after today is we want to give a brief introduction to Jack Voltaic for those who may not be familiar with it, talk about our objectives for Jack Voltaic 3.0, look at the timeline and way ahead, but really the main purpose of this is to introduce all of you to the planning committee, which is a key element of the Jack Voltaic series of experiments. And we also want to introduce you to the different teams in the planning committee and what their purpose is. And we wanted to solicit your help. We want to advertise this to you so you can take a look and say, yes, this is, find a place where you can participate and help develop the entire Jack Voltaic 3.0 series. So next slide, please. Well, I'll begin with a brief overview of what is Jack Voltaic. Well, it's a research project that enables stronger focus on emerging critical infrastructure threats, and it strives to reduce cyber-related risks to our cities. It aims to improve public and private partnerships, identify potential gaps in response plans, learn more about the interdependencies among critical infrastructure sectors at all levels, and also provide a safe learning environment for participants to gain exposure to the cyber incident response. We've run 2 iterations of Jack Voltaic before. The first, Jack Voltaic 1, was executed in New York City and alongside our industry partner, Citigroup. It served as the first step in building a framework to prepare, prevent, and respond to multi-sector cyberspace attacks on major cities. Jack Voltaic 2 was executed in 2018, and that was in partnership with AECOM. It built on the experiences and insights gained from Jack Voltaic 1 and began exploring how Army assets can be applied to defend the nation. In both cases, the cities leveraged the experience and results of Jack Voltaic to improve their cybersecurity posture through updated response plans, gaining additional resources, and increased awareness and partnerships. Now, Jack Voltaic consists of three key components. We have a cyber range that is what we call our live fire exercise. And that is for at the operator level, where we have people who are working on the system on a virtualization of their own network. The second part is a tabletop exercise, and that's for the mid-level managers. And the two work together. What the individuals see on the cyber range or the live fire exercise will get reported up to the leaders at the tabletop exercise, who then can discuss the response and the resolution to that. So it's an integrated live fire or cyber range with a tabletop. The third, though, is the planning committee. And that's one of the key differences between Jack Voltaic and most other national preparedness exercises, is that Jack Voltaic focuses on the areas of interest that are nominated by the participants. That is, while these exercises feature national level, while some exercises feature national level capabilities and resources, they are conceptually driven by the concerns of the cities and their infrastructure partners. And it goes back again to our purpose of today's webinar. We're building a planning team, and we want to provide you an opportunity to learn each of the teams so you can determine where you may best support. Next slide, please. Now, through the different iterations of Jack Voltaic so far, we've learned several things. First, we know that the risk management framework must be developed and it must be adaptable. You can't just focus on a physical threat like a hurricane, but you also can't just focus on an IT threat. You must get leaders involved. And on the Army side, we've learned that there's dependencies on the commercial critical infrastructure. And that's where we have an interest. And the purpose of this slide is to outline how Jack Voltaic, a research experiment that's focused on both critical infrastructure and public-private partnerships at the city level, can support Defender 2020, which is an Army exercise that demonstrates our ability to project forces. And what we mean by that is to take men, women, equipment from the continental US and move them over to overseas somewhere. So the end state that we're looking is to gain insight into how to synchronize multiple levels of industry and government into a cyber attack response, particularly against commercial critical infrastructure that supports the Army's ability to project forces. And we gain this insight through a research effort that looks at this infrastructure and the involved partnerships at the operator, manager, and senior levels. And that is Jack Voltaic. And therefore, Jack Voltaic 3.0 supports Defender 2020 by examining and analyzing the ability of Savannah, Georgia, and Charleston, South Carolina, to support the projection of forces in the face of a cyber operations attack against commercial critical infrastructure. Next slide, please. Here's our objectives for Jack Voltaic 3.0. First and foremost, we're exercising the cities of Charleston and Savannah in an emergency cyber incident response. We keep it focused at the cities. This is for the cities, and that's where we're maintaining our focus. We also want to reinforce a whole of community approach. And when we talk about that, we want to look at not only the different levels that we have in a response, but also the partnerships that exist across industry, academia, and government. The third objective ties into something called defense support of civil authorities. And this is how we can apply Army assets and to help out given an emergency with our local cities and states. This also incorporates into something called defense support of cyber incident response, which is a method by which Army cyber assets can be applied to local and civilian cyber concerns. This fourth objective is an ongoing objective for the Army Cyber Institute, and it's to develop a repeatable and adaptable framework that will allow a city to conduct their own Jack Voltaics. And it's really supposed to help minimize the amount of planning and resource effort that is for it, and to make it quick and easy for a city to continue their practice. And then finally, we want to look at how cyber attacks on commercial critical infrastructure impact the Army's ability to move people, men, women, equipment from continental US to overseas. So the next few slides, I'm going to turn over to Major Jason Hillman, who will talk about the way ahead as well as the planning committee.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. If you're with me on the slides, you should be on slide 5 of 8. It's the planning timeline that says way ahead for Jack Voltaic 3.0. Today is the 9th of December and the kickoff for JV 3.0, which is highlighted by the gold star on this slide.
Sorry, I didn't quite catch that.
It will take place simultaneously in 2 cities, Savannah, Georgia, and Charleston, South Carolina, on the 28th, 29th, and 30th of April, 2020. Between now and then, there are a total of 4 on-site planning workshops scheduled to get us ready for execution. 2 in Savannah and 2 in Charleston. Please save these key dates. This is when and where our planning committee will meet and prepare for execution in April. If you don't have this slide in front of you, I'm going to read off the key dates so you can copy them down. January 14th, 15th, and 16th is workshop number 1 in Savannah, Georgia. February 18th, 19th, and 20th is workshop number 2, as well as the legal and policy tabletop exercise in Savannah, Georgia. March 3rd, 4th, and 5th is planning workshop number 3 in Charleston, South Carolina. And April 7th, 8th, and 9th is planning workshop number 4 and the final planning meeting in Charleston, South Carolina. Again, the actual event will take place simultaneously in both cities on the 28th, 29th, and 30th of April, 2020. The next slide will show everyone a visual description of the planning committee organized. Next slide. The JV 3.0 Planning Committee is composed of 6 integrated and mutually supporting operational planning teams. They include scenario design and event execution, the data collection team, the strategic communications team, the legal and policy tabletop team, the cyber range team, and the Distinguished Visitors Day team. The next slide will introduce everyone to the leaders and the purpose for each of those teams. Next slide.
Okay, this is Doug Fletcher again, and what I want to be able to do with this slide is to give the team leads and their industry partners an opportunity to talk to you about what their team is responsible for and how you can help be a part of that. So I will begin with the scenario design and event execution team. It is myself and our industry partner from FTI, Mr. Brian Stites. And the purpose of our team is threefold. First, we're going to serve as an integrator for all stakeholder input into a comprehensive and realistic scenario that strives to meet the experiment and stakeholder objectives. The second is we want to design an exercise event that meets our objectives and benefits all participants and stakeholders by giving them an appreciation of the cascading effects and impacts of cyber incidents on critical infrastructure, the knowledge of the organization, capabilities, and policies available to assist in an incident response, and also give confidence in the ability of each community and their public-private partners to respond and recover. Lastly, this team serves as kind of the lead element for all the other planning teams, and will work with all the team leaders in integrating their efforts into the final event. And I'll be followed now by Major Eric Korn with the data collection.
All right, thank you, sir. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you again for taking the time to join us. My name is Eric Korn, along with Jonathan Snyder from FTI Consulting, and together we'll be leading the data collection operational planning team effort. And what we'd like to do now is just take a few minutes to talk about the purpose of our operational planning team, why it's important, and why your participation is critical to its success. So current members of our team include members of government, academia, and industry. We have our partner, FTI Consulting. We also have members of academia at the United States Military Academy and the University of Illinois who have also have also mentioned that they would like to participate. Additionally, we have major regional Army units such as 3rd ID who have also provided their interest to participate as well. So we're really looking for partner organizations and entities, municipal stakeholders, to see how we can identify, collect, analyze, and then synthesize the most important qualitative and quantitative feedback that is possible to have an impact in building resilience from the bottom up. And so to further explore the purpose, we're looking at the potential effects on Army force projection, as mentioned earlier, and the capabilities, and also the effects from a cascading cyber incident that may degrade municipal critical infrastructure. And so within that, we're looking to identify, understand, engage some of the cognitive, personal, and in-progress observations from a municipal emergency response perspective. Additionally, with the municipal data collection piece, we're also looking to add justification for more resources to address some of the potential impacts of these cascading cyber incidents. And this was the case with Jack Voltaic 1, where New York City subsequently created their New York City Cyber Command, and Jack Voltaic 2, where the city of Houston allocated additional resources for cyber incident response. So while we're looking at force projection from the Army's perspective, we're also oriented towards the data collection piece in both support of municipalities and other key stakeholders. So why should you participate? First, we really can't do this without you. The owners and operators of critical infrastructure, municipal stakeholders, and local units, their input is critical to the success of this event. Second, affecting change from the bottom up is a critical approach. The findings and reflections from this event are meant to be tools in building resiliency. This is about helping understand potential vulnerabilities, identifying critical cascading effects that haven't really been looked at yet, and building a holistic response at the community level. And lastly, we ask ourselves, if not me, then who? And if not now, then when? And this is really an opportunity to ensure that we capture appropriate data from critical municipal emergency response functions with regard to feedback, observations, as well as cyber range performance. Again, the goal is to build that exportable bottom-up approach so that municipalities are supported in their efforts to protect their communities. We hope you'll join us in this endeavor as it's critical to the protection of our nation. And please feel free to reach out to myself or Jonathan if you have any additional questions. And with that, I'll turn it over to our strategic communications team.
Good afternoon, everyone. Again, my name is Austin Minter. So I'm the lead for the strategic communications group. The folks that are doing the lion's share of the work, though, are on my team, Lisa Bem from the Army Cyber Institute, and then Sarah Mann and Erica Vinish, both of FTI Consulting. So our team is working to produce basically relevant material for Jack Voltaic and Jack Voltaic 3.0 for you to be able to share with your networks and those key audiences that you identify that are important to your organization. We'll be doing kind of an ongoing engagement with media leading up to and during Jack Voltaic 3.0, and also doing that same thing on social media platforms. So we want to be creating content that we can work together to send out to your key audiences that really means something to your organizations and those folks that you want to communicate with. If you're already committed to participating in Jack Voltaic 3.0, today I'd ask that you, after this, shoot us a point of contact with somebody in your organization that handles that type of strategic communications, or if you're somebody that enjoys kind of communicating those great stories about what your organization is involved with, we'd love to have you kind of join our working group, our team. So thank you.
And so I am Lieutenant Colonel Erica Mitchell, and I will be the lead for the legal and policy tabletop exercise with Ms. Courtney Gordon-Tennant as my co-lead and Mr. Brian Stites as the FTI lead for it. It's designed for policymakers and not just in industry and government and general counsel, but we're not just looking for IT folks. A lot of times, every time we bring up Jack Voltaic and all of that, we end up getting pushed to the IT department. We're looking for operational policymakers and also, like I said, general counsel. So that way you can kind of look at the integration of operational policy and cyberspace, because a lot of organizations are very clear on their operational policies, but when it comes to cyber, there's a lot less clarity in how cyberspace influences those operational policies. and then legal concerns relating to cyber incident response. So the Law and Policy TTX is taking place on the 18th through the 20th of February. So note that date change. It's a little bit different from the rest of the JV3 OPT teams in that you're going to go fast and furious for the next couple of months, and then your role in the OPT is basically over by the middle of February. So keep that in mind as you're determining your bandwidth and whether you're available to participate or not, that, you know, we're looking at going fairly hot and heavy soon. In the near future, we're going to be conducting meetings to determine and finalize topics and speakers. And anyone can provide topics. Of course, we're only going to be able to select a handful, but anybody can provide topics to us with no further commitment to participate in the operational planning team. But what we're looking for are people who really deeply care about the legal and policy implications in cyberspace and kind of forward-looking in what do we need to think through now to respond to incidents in the future. And I look forward to working with anyone that's interested in those things, and I will turn it over to Captain Steve Whittem for cyber range development.
Thank you, ma'am. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Steve Whittem, and I am the lead for the cyber range development team. So I'm joined by my counterpart from FTI, Mr. Jonathan Snyder. The purpose of a range is to provide a combination of a virtual and physical space for the Jack Voltaic event participants to conduct a game scenario on realistic representations of city-level infrastructure. So a range should support attack, defense, and most importantly, experiencing interruptions in service so that city-level responses are stressed, and then the city decision makers can refine those processes. Basically, the range is built to allow for actual attacks on dummy infrastructure so that everyone participating can react to the events without endangering real infrastructure or too heavily relying on imagination to play the scenario. Quality work by this team will allow some people, some perhaps for the very first time, to see a real cyber attack at work and give everyone a chance to learn. Additionally, a good environment that like we're going to be building will support quantitative data collection for the data collection team that will allow for the good data-driven decision making. With that in mind, we have 5 primary goals. The first one is to provide a realistic representation of operational infrastructure systems for practice. It's not reasonable to be able to replicate the entirety of the city's infrastructure in practice. So this team is going to be working to prioritize what systems we're going to replicate, which ones we're going to approximate, and which ones we're just going to have to ignore. The other one is another support the decision maker tabletop. So a lot of exercises like this one, you might see a white cell walk in with a card and say, hey, this event just happened. What we want to try to do is actually make the events that take place on the live fire range be those scenario injects the decision makers have to deal with. As such, the range should also be tailored to the scenario. So if the scenario calls for a certain event to take place, the range should be built to accommodate that. We also want it to be accessible from anywhere. So a lot of places might be hesitant to give up people for a certain amount of time. So the range is going to be accessible via a web browser as opposed to requiring people to be in a central location, and also accessible through the web browser in order to limit the amount of software necessary to download to participate. Finally, our goal is to have enough of the infrastructure in place to support the legal and policy tabletop, so that the legal and policy folks have a chance to work through some of those decisions as well. So who best fits this team? We're looking for technically minded or engineering minded people who want to help shape the design and construction of the practice environment, including to help prioritize what systems we develop and to what extent. We're also looking for folks who work on operating infrastructure who can provide insights on how that system, on how those systems function, so we can provide the best realism. And lastly, if you're actually willing and able to do some configuration work, I'd love to hear from you as well. And with that, I'll turn it over to Major Hillman for the distinguished visitors.
All right, thanks, Stephen. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Ron Yearwood from FTI and myself, we solicit your support for the Distinguished Visitor Day Planning Team. This team is all about providing senior leaders and C-suite executives the opportunity to experience and observe Jack Voltaic on April 29th, 2020. Their schedules are busy, so this is intended to be a short and tailored opportunity for strategic leadership. Examples of this type of leadership include city mayors, state representatives, governors, generals, chiefs of staff, CEOs, CIOs, etc. So if you're asking why should these individuals be interested in attending this Distinguished Visitor Day? Well, a couple of points there is it's just a good news story for them and your organization. We will have a media presence in both cities on the 29th of April. So it will show their involvement and a proactive approach at getting after these issues. The other thing that's important for you is that for the planners, it provides senior leadership FaceTime so that planners can identify and request resources if needed.
All right, so those are the 6 operational planning teams or planning teams that we have as part of Jack Voltaic 3. What I want to do now is open it up for questions. As Austin mentioned in the beginning of this, if you do have a question, please put it in the chat. If it's directed to a specific OPT or a specific individual, please identify that, and we're here to help. We're here to answer your questions. We'll give it, okay.
When can we expect itineraries for planning committees?
Okay, so the first question, when can we expect itineraries for the planning committees? Okay, those will be published shortly after the holidays. Okay, so what we want to do now is we really want to get your feedback about which planning committees that you want to be a part of. Once you contact us and let us know, we will then the planning team lead will then share with you kind of their running estimate and provide those milestones for you as well.
Congressional reps be invited by the locals or by us?
So the next question.
Will congressional reps be invited by us or by the locals?
So that's probably a combination of both. With the congressional representations, we will send out an invitation. We can also work through the cities themselves to send out invitations. That's something that the Distinguished Visitor Day Planning Committee will resolve.
Are we having another webinar for this?
Mention downloading software for the ranges. There's specific
Okay.
software.
So the next question, will there be a follow-up to this webinar in the form of another webinar? We can look at that. We've got a very positive response to this one, and we're open to doing more meetings as this.
All right. And so the next question, mentioning downloading software for the range, is there a specific software and a con for it to be on the Doden? We are not running this range from the Doden. In order to make it accessible for everyone who's going to participate, including our commercial partners, we are going to be making it, it's going to be more accessible than something hidden behind the Doden. Still kind of working through exactly where that's going to be. We have 2 ideas in mind right now, but the bottom line is there won't be a software download required. You should be able to access the virtual workstation through whatever web browser you currently have on your computer. So all you need is an internet accessible computer. You need a web browser like Chrome or Firefox that can connect, and all of the infrastructure, the virtual workstation will be running on a server on the back end that you interface with through a web page. Is there a specific question about Who is the main POC for the construction of the range? That's me, Captain Steve Whittam. My contact information was on the previous slide. I don't know if you want to go back to it.
We'll send that information out after the webinar. So
yeah, if there are any OPT specific or any operational planning team specific questions, the leads for those are going to be in the slide deck and the contact info for them as well. And if there are any infrastructure related, like where is it hosted, where's the cyber range going to be hosted, who's working on it, what are we looking at from a technical perspective, those questions will be addressed to me, and I will do my best to answer those questions and also bring you in if you have any ideas. Do you have any architecture diagrams that may contain how they are architected? I'm trying to understand. So not yet. Okay, so the question is, I'm very curious about the range infrastructure. Do you have any architecture diagrams as what they contain and how they are architected? I'm trying to understand how each city's infrastructure resources, et cetera, will be simulated and represented. Yes, that's exactly what this operational planning team is going to be working to configure. Right now we have the individuals who are going to be developing the system identified, and we have some locations in mind for where we're planning to host it. I will get into more details with everybody who decides that they want to participate on this team. But with regards to exactly what systems are going to be architected to what degree, and the extent of the replication of the city level infrastructure, that's precisely what this planning team is the purpose of the planning team. That's exactly what we're going to be working on.
So in response to the question, will there be any legal policy meetings in Charleston, or will the meeting in Savannah be the single meeting for the exercise? So the Law and Policy TTX is a single event that is taking place in Savannah. I understand the issue with traveling. However, we can't run multiple Law Policy TTX. It's a 2-day event, and it would take away from all the other planning meetings. So it is a one-time, one-location deal at this point.
But to add on to that legal policy tabletop will cover the entire exercise. So they'll cover both events at Charleston and Savannah.
Okay, so the next question is there a platform that the data committee uses to share collected data for further analysis? So not yet. We will probably, as the OPT forms, come together and see what the best platform is to do that, so that we can share across multiple different stakeholders. Excellent question, and if you would be willing to participate and help us in deciding that would be outstanding.
The next question is from Rich Nelson. Are you looking for or considering new tools to help you run the event, collect data, provide better situational awareness? In a short answer, possibly. So we do, our planning teams, the leadership of those teams have full oversight over what tools they're going to use. However, we are inviting industry to provide tools and capabilities at what we call lunch and learn events. So for each one of those workshops in Savannah and Charleston, over the course of those 3 days, we'll have lunch and learn events where industry can bring in a capability, provide information, or provide a demo of a product to the planners of the OPTs. And if you would like more information on that or how to sign up, you can contact me, Major Jason Hillman, the aci.jackvoltaic@westpoint.edu. Email address works. I'll receive that and respond to you accordingly.
Okay, so the next we have a question on there. Do we have a current list of participating organizations and distinguished visitors? So we do have a list of organizations that have told us that they're committed to participating in Jack Voltaic 3. With respect to the distinguished visitors, we have some committed already from the Army side, but again, that's the process of the OPTs or the planning teams to kind of look at what we currently have and expand it even more. So we will be able to get that picture out to you. And if there's organizations out there that you want to have involved, please invite them, put them in touch with us, and we'll make it happen.
That's fine. Let's see.
I don't know if you want.
Yeah.
So how or will the port operations be represented in this exercise? And so, as we mentioned with Jack Voltaic 3, one of the things that we are looking at is the Army's ability to project forces. And in this case, we're looking at the ability of the Army to move forces from the fort to the port. And so as part of that, we do want the port operations to be a part. We want the port and to be a part of the event, and there will be injects and items that will exercise the port. But also we want to look at the different interdependencies that exist. If something happens at the port, how does that spread out and impact the other participants?
And from a range infrastructure perspective, one of the groups that we have working on building that out has already pitched some ideas and already gotten started building out a virtual space for that. So the extent to which we replicate it, again, just like it's impractical to replicate the entirety of a city's infrastructure, it would also be impractical to replicate the entirety of a port. So we have some ideas, we have some work already underway, but what we end up prioritizing and to what extent it gets included in the scenario is going to be part of the range team.
Okay. All right. We'll give one last call for any questions.
Is ACI building a homebrew range or hiring a vendor? We are hiring a vendor, but we are also including interested people from the government who are going to be contributing as well. The extent to which the people on the operational planning team do some of the build work. I could go into all the technical details that I have in mind, but that would waste many people's time. Contact me directly. I'll let you know what we have in the works.
All right.
Sir, one question that I just thought of that some of our stakeholders might have, if you're a private company or if you're one of the city agencies and organizations, we're going to be working very closely, but we're talking about data collection and things like that. What if there are things that at this point maybe we're a little bit concerned about sharing, and how will the data collection be handled on things that might be sensitive to a customer or a stakeholder?
That's a great question, and we want to make sure that things like that don't come in between of the stakeholders' participation in here. So if it's a matter of the stakeholder saying either I don't want to provide that information, okay, then can we replicate it? Like what we're talking about with the range. When we build the range, we're not going to build the exact. We don't want to build the exact range or exact network infrastructure that a commercial industry has, because we understand there's some sensitivities with respect to that. But we want to get something that would promote the exercise, that would be beneficial to them, that might simulate what they have to a certain extent, and then that would help feed the data collection. Because really, what we're looking at here, one of the main efforts is not just the force projection, but incident response. So we want to see what happens really after a breach has occurred.
I think that's a really critical point, and it's something that separates the Jack Voltaic series from a lot of the other types of events that you either may have participated in or heard about, is we are not focused on the protection element itself, right? We are in some ways kind of assuming compromise, and the range is going to be supporting the scenario. The scenario was built to allow a city to respond to the event after it has taken place, right? So we're not going to be fully replicating the firewall system, for example. That would be a protection mechanism. We're bringing people on board to watch for a red team attack. We're kind of starting from the point where the red team has already compromised something, and now what do we do with it? How do we clean out the bad actor? So it's going to look kind of unfamiliar to those who have done events like this, because the purpose for it is entirely different. What we're stressing is going to be very different. A lot of the same tools and techniques will be used, but the where we kind of start in the timeline is going to look different. So hopefully that made sense.
And one other thing too is, we're not looking to go into any kind of secret classification or top secret. We want to keep this at a completely no classification level. All right. So, as we go through these different planning teams and we talk about the different things that we're looking at doing in the teams, we want to keep that in mind. And if there's something that comes up that we need to address, then talk to us about it. We'll work through it. All right. Well, if there's any other questions, or if you have any, here we go.
The social aspects of the exercise.
So the question on there now, are there any social aspects of the exercise? For example, how can you organize a community through Twitter? So we're considering that, and that'll be part of the scenario design planning team, and then we'll see what that moves through, or how that flushes out.
One of the major elements of the scenario and even the range component is the communications piece. So among the many systems that we're planning on including is a way for the participants to have kind of a centralized communications platform. The idea being to replicate the existing communications platforms that would be in place for emergency response. But we are also very cognizant of the fact that social elements play a huge role in disaster response. So if it makes sense to include a social media type platform onto the range, that is something that we have discussed, and would love to hear more feedback on that kind of thing.
Okay. One last chance for questions. Also note that you can ask them privately. So we got another one.
Understand the organization of the two cities.
Okay, so the question, are there any resources available now that would help understand the organization of the two cities? Names of utilities and municipalities, things like that. We don't have anything readily available now other than what we have is listed as our stakeholders and committed participants. We also, we do have our friends within the cities of Savannah and Charleston that we will, once we get the OPTs established or the planning teams established, we will work with them to help map that out. Because really, when we look at Jack Voltaic, what we're looking at is it's a bottoms-up approach. And so, we're going to ask people to participate, but we can't really task people to do that. We want them to come play with us. And so, as we get the different participants and as we get their commitments, we can help build that picture of what it would look like, and then continue to develop the exercise.
If I could give some type of organizational structure to it. So if you think about 16 different critical infrastructure sectors represented in Charleston and in Savannah, we have partners or participation from about 10 out of 16 in both cities. And that varies. So if you look down the list of the 16 different critical infrastructures, about 10 various ones from each city are participating.
Will there be another briefing before workshop 1 on January 14th? There's a workshop.
So yes, I think based on what I'm getting with the amount of questions we have and the positive feedback that we're getting right now, then we will plan to have another one right after the holiday, right after the new year. So please keep an eye on your emails for that.
Yes, so can we get a list of the sicker sector reps needed? Absolutely. We will break those down for you by city and send them the ones that we still need representation for. Thanks, Mr. Donnelly.
Yes. Okay. So with regards to there's a question, will we still be using the Georgia Cyber Center in Augusta, Georgia? We're looking at the structure, we're looking at the exercise. You know, what we have to consider is the amount of resources we have available to execute. Augusta provides a central location for a lot of things, but my planning team will take a hard look. That's one of the issues that one of the things that we're going to take a hard look at is, okay, what does this look like and what's the best setup for this event? All right. Well, so if there are still questions out there, please feel free to reach out to us. One thing that I want to emphasize is, you know, all of these Jack Voltaics, it's based on, we talk about researching public-private partnerships, and we couldn't do this without ourselves having a public-private partnership. And we're very glad and very thankful to have FTI Consulting as the Jack Voltaic 3 partner for this. And we know, you know, we've been in working with their team for the past few months now, and we're excited to have them on board, and I know they're excited to be a part of this. So if you have any other questions, please, you have my contact information there, email and phone. We've also put Mr. Brian Stites from FTI, their lead planner, from up there as well. And then that last one there, the aci.jackvoltaic@westpoint.edu. If you send an email to that, everyone on the Jack Voltaic team will get it. So, you know, please reach out to us and let us know what your questions are, you know, where you see yourself fitting in with the planning teams. And we look forward to continue the conversation with y'all as we go forward. So are there any alibis? All right. Well, thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate it. And we look forward to talking with y'all at another time.
Beat Navy.
Thanks, take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I gotta run to my dental appointment.
Eric, you looked at any IRB